Okay, hello everyone and welcome. Thanks for joining us on this webinar today. This recorded webinar is going to be available for your use, and so feel free to watch it and rewatch it as you need to as we get into our reporting for the 2018-2020 community investment cycle. So we are excited to begin this cycle with mid-year reporting, and sort of this is our first round of using that RBA framework, so we wanted to just outline a few things with that specifically, but also give you sort of an overview of reporting in general. So next slide, please. So I am Lauren Kimball, the Director of Learning and Performance, and on the call with us today is Charles Peterson, our Senior Director of Analytics and Performance at United Way. We also have Heather Tomczak. Many of you guys know her as the Director for Community Impact. She's our e-CImpact guru, and will take us through a little bit of that demo to the actual reporting logistics. Next slide. So just to sort of remind you guys where we've been and where we're heading, you know, we have been working with y'all as partners on a data journey over the last several years, starting with an open investment process, and then we had cohorts several years ago that sort of introduced the RBA framework, and through the application process, we saw what you guys were measuring under each of the three categories of how much are we doing, how well are we doing it, and is anyone better off? And so with that shared framework, we now have shared categories of metrics within each sort of area of funding that we're asking you to report on for the first time this year. So we've been through this data journey together, and this is sort of our first go around, like I said, with the RBA framework. So next slide, please. Today we'll be just reviewing sort of the overall reporting. Heather will go into most of the things that are familiar to folks that have been receiving funding from United Way. Just want to remind you guys of the various aspects that are due in the 6-month reporting timeline, and then we'll really focus the remainder of our time on results-based accountability, that framework, and the logistics of entering in the data on e-CImpact. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Heather to get us going on just the reporting sort of basics.
Thanks, Lauren. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. I'm just going to cover briefly the reporting overview. Everyone should have access to their grant agreement, so it outlines all of your reporting requirements. If you have not already done so, I would highly suggest that you read that through, and if you have any questions, reach out to anyone on staff to answer or address any questions you might have. For the folks that are brand new, those are located, all your grant agreements are located in e-CImpact under your grant agreement area. For those returning, I'll point out a couple of new items that we have added this year, both in the agency and also program level. So what you're looking at currently is the program requirements. Everyone that has been previously funded remembers the performance report. That's at mid-year and then year-end. Client level demographics, those are de-identifiable, and there's a template located in e-CImpact in the Resource Center for your guidance on those. The demographic narrative, that just outlines pretty much in a Word format what is located within the spreadsheet. What your dollars can do is an item that you would fill out based upon each program dollar-wise. And that's due. 211 profile update. Everyone should have received an email from Lindsay Paulson within our 211 department to update all of your program information within 211 to keep the database updated within that, so that folks that call in for 211 resources are up to date. And then volunteer engagement, that is the component of where we allow volunteers to go out to your sites, day of caring, and then holiday helpers is another aspect that you can utilize. Agency requirements, those are, one will be due per agency in mid-year, so that January 15th deadline. One success story out of whatever programs that you are being funded in will be due. At year end, that would be a by program success story. So just to make sure that you keep that in mind. NAM guidelines and principles, that is due in January 31st. If you have not started working through that, I would highly suggest that you go to the NAM website and look at that. And then a United Way campaign. Basically, that performance report goes into an overview of your funded program from July 1st through December 31st. And what that's capturing is basically your successes and learnings from what you have been doing in your program. Demographic data. This is a really small screenshot that many of you might not be able to see on the screen, but the template is located within this slide. And what it outlines is each required component. So, or each component of the template. So agency name, program name, gender, birth date, age, ethnicity, race, zip code, household income, and number in household. Charles, I don't know if you wanted to add anything of based on the demographic stuff.
No, I mean, we do have sort of the preferred kind of breakdown within each category here on the template. In case you're wondering, you know, maybe our preferred format is having race broke down or ethnicity, it's all on the format. And then all of these are required with the exception of number in household, which is optional. We've really been encouraging folks to include that because it helps us get a better picture of sort of where our client stakeholders are at in terms of their position in terms of being above or below the poverty line and sort of other types of comparables like that. Every time I bring this up, I always say that it is required that your program submit this data to us, so please ask your clients, but you know, nobody really should be turned away for refusing to provide this. This is definitely not, you know, a requirement for receiving services, so please keep that in mind.
A brief example of this for the folks that are newly funded to United Way, what your dollars can do. This just kind of outlines in generic terms of how much maybe it costs to run a specific program, specifically on meals or tutoring, nights in shelter. And this really allows us to market during our campaign to donors that are giving through payroll deduction. So it helps present that marketing tool for our programs that we're investing in. And here is just an outline of what we're going to be offering for reporting, because we do know that, you know, some folks are new, and then some folks have new staff that might need to ask questions. We are going to be hosting office hours, both on those 2 dates in December, and then there's 2 dates also in January that we will be here at United Way to offer you assistance. Or there's always, you can reach out to your United Way director to answer any questions that you might have. Charles, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Heather. Heather covered most of the general reporting requirements. A lot of you have probably been through those before, and they look more or less like they have in previous years. What is going to be new for both you and us this year is gathering these results-based accountability data points that we've been working towards over the past 18 months or so. So just as a quick refresher, sort of those data are built on a results-based accountability framework. So we're asking for results in terms of how much did we do, how well did we do it, and is anyone better off? For this reporting cycle that is coming up on January 15th, that's your 6-month reporting. The number of clients served, so that's your how much category, that's going to be required for all programs. It's optional to give us your how well or better off measures. We are working with a few groups of agencies to sort of pilot that process, and you're free to, if you have data in those categories that you feel like supports some of the other elements of your program reporting, feel free to include those as well. As Heather mentioned, Different programs have different requirements in terms of what they should be submitting back on their results-based accountability, and that should be outlined in everybody's grant agreement. So there's a quick snapshot of where, sort of what it looks like in your grant agreement. Here's a little bit of a zoomed-in view on that, right? So you might see that you have a couple different metrics under how much did we do that are required. So, and this is just an example. It might not apply to your program, but everybody has to report back on total number of clients served. But you also may be required to report back on clients provided one-on-one services. And then there may be some other optional metrics that are listed there in your grant agreement. So be sure to go maybe print off a copy of your grant agreement, have it in front of you when you come into e-CImpact to report against your data. I think it'll make it a lot easier. And if you have any questions about any of these things being required or optional for your program, feel free to reach out to your Community Impact Director here at the United Way. So again, the structure is sort of how well, better off. When you're reporting the data back into us, you'll have to pick a metric category, a metric, and a description. I'll show you a little bit about kind of conceptually what that looks like. And then when we get to the end of this, Heather's going to do a quick demo within e-CImpact so you can see what it looks like actually within the tool. So the most important thing about this is that when you're reporting data back into us, we need you to try to do the best job that you can in describing exactly what that data is, because that's going to help us make sure that we're sort of using that data responsibly when we aggregate it across programs, and that we know exactly what we're looking at. So some good things to maybe mention are the time frame over which the data was collected, and then what that number represents. So just a very clear description of what that data is. If you happen to be using a particular tool or scoring benchmark, definitely make sure to mention that. Also, maybe talk a little bit about where the data is collected from or how it's collected. So maybe if for your how well your sort of client satisfaction data, whether you survey everybody, whether you survey a sample of your clients, whether you obtain that through other means. Here's some examples of what that might look like. So again, you're going to have to select through a drop-down what your metric category is. So in this first example, it's clients provided one-on-one services. So if that's a required or optional metric for my program, I would select that, and then there'll be a spot where you can key in a data point. So just simply a number. So in this case, it's 253. Then, as I mentioned, sort of the important part is to go through that description and really explain to make sure that we understand what that 253 represents. So in this case, you can see in the description, we note that that's a unique count of individuals who met with a case manager. So that's sort of our definition of what a one-on-one service is. It's a meeting with a case manager. I've noted the time frame over which the data is collected, which makes sense because it kind of corresponds with this reporting period. And then we know that the data is kind of obtained from some sort of a case management system report. And then there's another example there around meals served, just so that you know that, there are certain times where the sort of general metric of what we're looking back would be based on people, so like clients. But then there's other times where we're looking at, counting services. That's kind of an example of that. How well did we do? Again, it's a kind of a client satisfaction measure. So for these categories, we're asking for a count of people as well as a percent. So you'll have two different metric values that you'll be asked to enter there. And then again, I'm looking for a very thorough description of exactly what that data point is. And again, that's just to make sure that we understand what we're looking at, we interpret it correctly, and we don't do anything. We don't use that data in a way that would be misrepresented or sort of otherwise cause problems. And then the better off examples, again, you'll be asked to submit two different data points. One will be kind of a total number of clients, or a total count, and then a percent. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Heather. She's going to do a quick demo in e-CImpact, and then we will kind of close out the presentation and be available for questions.
Thanks again, Charles. So I just want to start with the preface that if you don't have a current login for e-CImpact, you will need to go ahead and contact your Community Impact Director, and I can set you up with that account. But currently, everyone should have a login for e-CImpact. This will go directly to, so this is what your screen should look like in regards to the reporting that's up and coming for January 15th. Once you log in, this is your home screen. If you ever get lost within the website, you can go ahead and click on home and it takes you right back to that. A couple of items that I'd like to point out before we jump into the reporting is that your session has a time limit. So just make sure you're keeping that in mind as you walk through your reporting, and save often because the site does not do that for you. It will give you a warning before it kicks you out, but once your time is up, it's going to kick you out and you will lose everything if you have not already saved. So I would do that. Another piece that I'd like to add as an important component is that everyone should take a peek at who is their contact within e-CImpact, because we really ask that you update that information within e-CImpact, because we use that as a tool to communicate with you. Throughout the year, we primarily focus in on it can go to either your primary. So some of our communications go to CEOs only, and that would be a direct to the CEO or executive director. Other emails can go to those folks that select that they want to be a primary contact and receive, or not primary contact, but an individual that wants to receive all communications. It just would not allow you to receive those emails that are primary for your CEO or executive director. And what I'm talking about is when you go in to see your information, the primary is usually listed as the CEO or executive director. But if you want to receive all those communications within that we send through e-CImpact, you would just include yourself in all emails, and it will do that, generate that when we generate those communications. Great. Now as we go back to the reporting piece, if you do click on something else and you can't locate that, what you're looking for is the 2018 mid-year. And this takes you directly to your program reporting area. A couple of pieces, it will walk you through where you are currently at within the website and the reporting. So if you haven't started, obviously you see mine is in progress currently. Most everyone should be not started, but once you start walking through some of your reports, it will start taking you through each step till you are actually able to submit the documents. The top area is always agency level information. So the first piece of agency reporting is only your success story. So again, that is just you select the program that you want to highlight for your success story and you submit it here. And how you access that report is you just click on it. It gives you some directions and instructions up here, but basically you're entering the information within each of these fields. You can open them to see how far you can go. It also tracks your character limits and how far you've gone over. Those are restricted, so you won't be able to save the document until you actually get to the correct character limit before you can actually save and mark it as completed. And some of these are required fields. You will have to enter something into each field that's required in order to proceed, and it's going to give you a warning every time that you don't have that completed. If you have other folks that are doing this outside of e-CImpact, you can print this information via the View Printable version here in the bottom right-hand corner. And it brings up a PDF, and you can send that to folks in your company and organization. To navigate back to the different reports, you would just click up here, and it takes you to a nice little filter that takes you through each report. The first one is that mid-year performance report, and there's, again, just a few different fields that you're going to have to enter, and that's by program. So all of the programs that you are currently receiving funding have to have a mid-year performance report completed for each program. I'm going to go directly to the results-based accountability now. So this is where Charles had suggested that you have your grant agreement easily accessible in front of you. Would be highly suggested to do that so you can walk through each of the metrics that you're required to do. But how you start that, and this is by program, just to point that out again. So what you're going to do is you're going to select your strategy. So I am an academic support program. I'm going to select that and save my work. And this takes you to each field that needs to be completed that Charles went through earlier. So the how much, the how well, and the better off. So everyone knows that this, or to point out again, the how much is required for this first mid-year reporting. The how well and the better off are not requirements currently, but if you feel like you want to enter that information, you're not going to be docked or demerited, but it'd be helpful to have that information in there just to test it out. You can please feel free to do so. So to start that off is you click on that the link, and you'll notice that it brings up three, or some might have different metrics based upon the program and the program scope. So you'll select the ones that you are going to be required to complete. Save it, and then it's going to take you to another screen to where you're going to enter those actual numbers and a description for each metric. So what you're looking for is that actual number is based upon how much you put in that demographic upload file, which we'll get to later. So what you'll do is you'll enter a description, and you'll do that for each metric that you selected. Next, you're going to go to, if you want to complete the how well, you would do the same information. So how well is just the program satisfaction. And you'll enter you'll have to scroll down to the how well component, and you'll enter that information, so the actual clients and then the percentage. That doesn't auto-calculate, so you're going to have to actually enter that percentage achieving, and then you'll put an explanation in there. And you'll do the same for better off. You'll select the metrics that that associate with your program. And then it'll take you have to scroll down. And it has the same information. So you'll have, whoops. It has the same information. So you'll put the actual clients and actually achieving and description for each one. To go back and after you might leave and come back to the information, you just click on the edit tool, and that takes you back to the screen so that you can upload your information or enter the information. The other piece that I just referred to was that demographic upload for the folks that have not reported previously. And for the folks that have new staff members, that is located under demographic upload. That is that template that you will be completing by program per client. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that template, enter your information, and then you're going to upload it into this upload field. So you'll choose the file that you need that's on your desktop or wherever you saved it, and upload it there. The additional information is any accompanying documents that you might feel help support that demographic upload file. And again, I just want to point out that that demographic total number needs to coordinate with the metric that you placed in the how much field. Charles or Lauren, do you have anything to add to that component of the RBA or the demographic upload or any of the other reports?
No. I don't think so. Again, just reiterate that it's important to, really, especially this first time around, probably have your grant agreement printed out, just so you're not having to guess about which metrics that you're optional or required for your program. And then again, to sort of reiterate what Heather just went over is that, for your how much category, when you're reporting total number of clients served, so that should be for the first 6 months of your grant. Same thing with your demographic file here. So those, if you're submitting a demographic file with 300, client records on it, then we would expect that total number served that you reported into us to be roughly 300. Obviously, there are some inconsistencies that happen every now and again with maybe reporting systems or, certain records got lost or, corrupted. But, overall, just in terms of a rule of thumb, you should look for those to be pretty roughly equivalent.
One other thing. Sorry, Heather. One other thing to mention on the how much piece is that, the number of clients served in the demographic file should be pretty close to the same, but there are also other categories of how much. For instance, maybe you do group and one-on-one services, and so you're tracking those numbers. We're not expecting those numbers to necessarily add up to the number of total served or be the same. That's okay. We sort of understand that there's going to be a discrepancy there once we get into those other areas of the how much, but the number of served is really what we're looking for to be the same. Also, just note on the how much that you will have questions regarding the number of clients and questions regarding the number of services. And so obviously the number of services may be more than actually your number of clients served. So just be attuned to that as you are completing that section. Those are just some of the nuances. Heather, I know I interrupted you, so what were you going to add?
Thanks, Lauren. The only thing I was going to add is I know the directors have been out and about meeting with agency representatives, and we have highly suggested that you again revisit that total served and the goals that you projected within your grant application. I would ask that you look at those, that total served you projected in your grant application and make sure that it still makes sense as we start to begin to do this, the first round of mid-year reporting, so that it would align with what you are going to be placing in your mid-year report. So if you want to make any changes to those, I would highly suggest that you ask your community impact director to have that conversation. Thanks, Lauren.
Great. So folks, we are about at the end of this webinar. So thank you for your time today. We know that this is our first go through of the 6 months using the RBA framework. We've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. Recognizing that this is the first time for everyone, please just don't hesitate to call if you have clarification questions, or reach out, if you have any bumps along the way. Our job is to try to make this smooth so we can, aggregate the data and really tell a comprehensive story of all the great work that's being done in the community. So just want to again highlight those opportunities to engage with us. We have those office hours in December and January where we'd love for you to come in, bring your laptop and your data, and we can walk through any questions that you might have, one-on-one, and address any nuances or questions there. And of course, we're always available to do one-on-ones over the phone and do go-to-meetings and things like that to make it easy on you. The most important thing is we have accurate information going in and that we're all on the same page of what that sort of looks like. So any clarification that we can do, we're happy to assist there. Otherwise, appreciate your time and look forward to receiving your reports, which are due on January 15th. So just want to stop that deadline again. And in the meantime, have a wonderful holiday season with you and your families. Thanks for all the work that you do in the community. Take care.
Thanks.